Today I'm making a beginner's guide for Gedonia's dungeon mode. I'm constructing this around new players coming into the game, but I hope it's something that advanced players can get used to better. To begin, I want to show you a little bit about the base. The base is your area of operations. To start, you have the map. This campaign map is where you will find basically how you start the dungeon itself. You can add difficulty to make it harder, to give you better loot. You can look around else in this beginner area. We have the guy right next to it sells equipment. It sells up to your level. So if you look, you got some level 75 stuff. It sells in increments of 5 levels. So this is your healing spot. Recover all your stamina and mana. This is the divine anvil. You can use yellow magic crystals that you find in the dungeons to add a level to your gear or increase its rarity. The max rarity is epic, so let's take this epic dagger. I'm going to try to upgrade its level. So as you can see, we tried to upgrade the rarity, but we can't because it's already epic. So we're going to upgrade the level. So this will bump its level up by 5. You can only increase it once though. So if you have a level 70 weapon, it goes up to 75. If you have 75, it goes to 80, so on and so forth, up to the max of 120. But again, you can only do this once, so per weapon. On the other side, we have the blessing statue. The blessing statue can be used to add blessings you find in the dungeon to permanently add on to a weapon. So you can use it from dungeon to dungeon, no matter if you leave or not. You can think of it as like a different type of enchantment than you can get in the base game. So since I'm a ranger, put on the ranger enchantments here. And you put your weapon in here. Go to bless. It'll take a little bit of gold depending on the item level and what type of enchant you're trying to put on. So it usually takes around 400 or 500, I would say, maybe a little more depending on what type of enchant you're trying to put on. Outside, this is the housing area. If you played the base game and you've had a house in the base game, you'll recognize this. The most important part of it is the crafting. So you can easily put that down by going into this builder here, switching to outdoor mode, functional, and you'll find it right in here. It only costs 60 gold. You can plop it down wherever. I already have one down here. So crafting is important if you want to get your poisons or get your hardening or whatever on your armor. You can find the maps for those at this guy. So something important here is he has the ancient tablets, rare berries, and weapon shards. So you'll find those in the dungeons. The tablets will give you a skill point, the berries will give you experience, and the weapons will give you some random gear. But for the most part, he sells mats for crafting. He also sells arrows for archers. But you can get a blessing for that later on. So you can see I've got alchemy, enchanting, and leatherworking for my character. So now we get into the dungeons. So the campaign map is going to be your best friend. Straight up, you can see that we have a difficulty of 2, which is what I recommend starting with, so that you can find epic gear. If you start at 0, you can only find uncommon. Level 1, you can find up to rare. Level 2 is when you can start getting epic gear, which is the highest quality. I recommend starting always on level 2. It only takes about 100, 200 gold to get to that, so you may have to farm a little gold to begin with, but once you have that, you're in. So now, as you can see, we picked a spot on the map to start. You can start open world, or you can start inside one of the dungeons. Every area has open world or dungeon. I tend to go with open world because it's easier to find your way around, and I play a stealth archer, so I don't like to be up and close and personal. So as you can see, I'm stealthing around. This is one of the first things you can find in a dungeon that you want to go for is a blessing statue. These blessings will only last as long as you're in the dungeon. So if you reset your dungeon or you get killed and leave for whatever reason, you lose your blessings. This is another guy you'll find. He's a merchant. He sells up to the quality of stuff you find. I believe this is a level 0 we're running right now that I just jumped in. So he only sells up to uncommon, but if we were on a level 2 or higher, he could sell up to epic quality. So this is the ancient tablets that I mentioned earlier. You collect 3 of these. You get 1 per chest. So the blue is the exit, this light. The green is the quest. So you can see our quest over here that says destroy a dark sphere. If we kill this, we will add on a modifier to the end game boss. So we'll get some increased loot, experience, whatever we choose, at the cost of the boss having a perk. So you'll find these skill point shrines around. They seem to be infinite, like you get as many skill points as you want. At a certain point, you won't really have anything to use skill points on. I'm around level 80. I've already almost run out of things to use my skill points on. So we're going to kill this dark sphere real quick. And as you can see, this is another reason I choose open world for my archer, so I have more room to kite around in circles. By all means, feel free to choose whatever you want. I prefer to use stealth to kind of ignore enemies for the most part that I don't have to kill, because they really don't give a lot of experience compared to the shrines. That's something I'll go into in a little bit later. So you can see we killed the dark spawn. Go ahead and vanish to get out of combat. Talk about this. So you have 4 options. You can get more loot, better loot. You can get more experience or more resources. I highly recommend going for more loot, more resources, and more experience. Most of the time, whenever you're doing this, you'll be on dungeon level 10, which I recommend to always try and be on, as you'll only get epic loot, so better loot is not necessarily something you want. This little red shrine is like an upgraded version of the dungeon shrine we looked at earlier, the blessing statue. So, as you can see, they're ignoring me because I have improved stealth and I have a permanent blessing from the blessing statue at base. That means they can never see me while I'm in stealth. Right, so we got the blessing scrolls from that. Didn't even have to fight anybody for them. So if you use this, it's basically like using the blessing statue. You can choose whatever you want. So since I'm going archery, let's go ahead and choose multi-shoot. And let's see what the other one can give me. Let's go with gain 5 good quality items. This will give you the best. Oh, I am on level 2. This is the best. It'll give you the best quality item that your dungeon difficulty has. So since this one has uncommon, rare, and epic, it'll give us epic since that's the highest quality item we have. So you only need to be on dungeon level 2 to get the best loot. But I recommend being on dungeon level 10 if you absolutely need to get gear. So another thing to talk about, these are the dungeon berries I mentioned earlier. You collect a few of these, you can get a ton of experience by trading them in. They're also good for another thing. These are dungeon puzzles. These can get really confusing for new beginners. Basically, if they have letters over them, copy what they say. If they have numbers, you want to follow the pattern. So you didn't see 5 multiplied by itself. So we're going to do 1 multiplied by itself is 1 across the board. And we can unlock this chest. Usually they give you dungeon scrolls. Sometimes you'll have to do them to get boss information to remove perks, which is exactly what this one is. So you can see we're just going to follow the pattern. 7 times 2. I mean, just multiply it times 2. And yes, you have to do math. It's super annoying. Sometimes you're going to bust out a calculator for these things. So you can see, completed it. And we managed to remove a boss quirk, invincibility. And another plus side of doing these is they give you a lot of experience. Almost as much as the blessing shrines do. So another thing, try not to die. You can die easily to traps and stupid things. And if you die, you will lose all of your progress in your dungeon. And your difficulty will be reset as well. So whenever you load back in, doesn't matter where you loaded, it'll automatically put you back in base. You'll have to restart at the very beginning on difficulty level 0. So try not to die if possible. Alright, so you've made it through the dungeon. You've completed all 3 zones. And you finally made it to the boss. So the boss is always going to be in this weird kind of circular room. It doesn't ever change. But I usually try to pull them back in here if possible. Or you can just fight them in here, depending on how difficult it is. This is a pretty easy boss, so I'll just get right up close, multi-shot, and quickly take this guy out. The only thing you really have to worry about here are traps and the ads. Yeah, quick work of that guy. Wasn't too difficult. Yeah, let's go ahead and take out those ads. See, the traps do more damage than the boss most of the time. But every boss, you could get random bosses, you can get random traps. It really just depends. But if you can pull them to the other room, if the traps are giving you difficulty, they won't reset or anything like that. So here we go. We just killed all the ads and the boss. So now we get the option to either return home or increase difficulty. So some of you might just click return home. So like, oh, I'm done with the dungeon. Let's leave. I would recommend not doing that. I almost recommend always going to increase difficulty, because increasing difficulty can get pretty expensive gold-wise, and it's a way to just keep pushing through the dungeon. But if you click return to base here, you will lose your blessings that you have on you, but you will keep your dungeon difficulty. So if you don't care too much about your blessings, like you're not trying to push for a max dungeon level, you can return to base, put on some blessing for your items, do whatever you need to do, and it'll save your difficulty level, and you can just travel back and continue on. You will lose your blessings though, so that is something to take into consideration. Here we are, back in. So as you can see, you can check your blessing list. I did lose my crit blessing I had on me, so that does show you that you will lose your blessings, but you will keep your difficulty level. Alright, so you've made it here, all the way to the end of this guide. I do have something else I'm going to talk about, which is my recommendation for beginners, which is the stealth mode. So I highly, highly recommend when you're first starting out, regardless of your play style, to pick up stealth, because it's so broken in dungeons. The blessing I showed you earlier that enemies can't detect you means you can just walk right past enemies, go to the shrines, loot all the chests without any of them ever seeing you. If you do take some damage or get in combat, you can vanish right back into stealth, which I believe I did earlier in this video. So yeah, regardless of playstyle, I recommend maxing out banditry first, picking up stealth, because it's so useful for clearing dungeons fast, because monsters generally don't give you a lot of experience. So this is something you want to do for leveling for sure, is to pick up a blessing for this right here, where the enemies can't detect you. This will carry you all the way to level 120 if you want it. I've only played this character a couple hours, and I'm already level 80 because I just popped on stealth, ran straight to the shrines. It helps if you pick up like wind element to get some movement speed. You can go into the talent section and get some movement speed as well. But as you can see, I'm level 80, and even in stealth, I move ridiculously fast. Got move speed on my gear, and I've picked up some talents. So this talent section is new to dungeon. I highly recommend maxing this out as well, because it'll give you damage and health and mana and all that, but it will give you ridiculous move speed as well. If you max it out, you'll get 1.25, which is crazy. So sprinting around, you can see that I'm not reducing stamina with my sprint as well. And this is because of another blessing that I think is super important, as sprinting doesn't require stamina. Obviously, if you hit 120 and you are more concerned about actually killing bosses and pushing dungeons, you can replace all of this. You can get rid of the stealth. But I think for leveling, this greatly increases it. Alright, that's my guide. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you got something out of it. And you can get into Gedonia and enjoy dungeons as much as I have.